Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I'm really happy for the first time in 2018 to be able to say, Mr. Joe Kissell. Joe, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, it seems
nice
a little
to be here.
Seems a little strange to be saying it this late in the new year, but you know.
Yeah, well, it's all good.
Yeah. So we're here today to talk about new editions of two of your books, Take Control of Your Passwords and Take Control of 1Password. And, this is one of those things, Joe, right at the moment, it's very near and dear to my heart because happily it's not the MacVoices website, but I'm working heavily on a hacked website trying to get out from under it. I have no reason to believe that it was a password issue that let somebody nefarious in, but still, you have to wonder. And inevitably now, when I distribute passwords to people, I get a lot of pushback, because I try to follow your advice and give them, secure passwords, and, they want, mother's name, father's name, dog's name, and that's it. Yeah, exactly my reaction. So I'm kind of anxious to hear what your latest advice is and what pushed you to upgrade these two particular books. But before we do that, you have a little bit different look. You look more expensive.
Is it? That's good. Well, I got a haircut just yesterday. Is that it?
No, that's not it.
Is it? Yeah. Well, the frame that contains me is bigger. It's a different camera because it's the camera built into my new iMac Pro.
Oh.
So it has more pixels and things. I don't know. It's a different camera. So I only know how I look this big. I don't know how this looks, at any reasonable size. On my old iMac, which is still sitting over there, I had a Logitech external camera, very much like the one I believe you're using, and that served me very well. The new iMac Pro is, I think, I could be wrong about this, I think it's the only Mac that has a 1080p built-in FaceTime camera. And so I wanted to at least try it out and see what it looks like. I mean, it's an expensive computer, so you would think it would have a decent camera. I hope it looks okay. It does, it does take in more of the clutter of my office. So we're learning, So I get a fancy new iMac. I'm just talking about how interesting the camera is, and then in the process of that, it just decides to freeze. So I'm going to say probably it's not the iMac's fault. Probably it's Skype's fault, because our friends at Microsoft, for all of their many virtues, have just not delivered a solid experience with their video conferencing app in so many years. So if it happens again, I think I know how to fix it more rapidly. But anyway, so yes, I have a little bit of a different look. It's weird for me. It's a little disorienting for me, and I could always go back to the old camera if that seems to be a good thing to do. I should probably clean up clutter from my office that you can now see. But I mean, not that. I could follow your example and add more clutter.
Yeah. This is called post CES, so
right.
It'll get better, I promise. So
but anyway,
so let's
that's me. How are you? How are you?
I'm great.
You've recovered from CES, and you've recovered from your post CES
issues.
Issues.
Yes, I'm back to healthy, and I'm delighted though to have you as the first guest back after the CES crush. For just the reasons I said. This is always such an important thing, and you have taught me so much about the fact that the world of passwords and that aspect of security just constantly changes, and we constantly need to be aware of it, and even more so, it's more important now than ever to use a password manager, because there's no way you can possibly remember all the secure passwords that you need to have.
Yeah. So that's all true. And, at a high level, if you were to ask me, what's the latest in the world of passwords, I could say they still suck. I mean, they do. I mean, I keep reading these articles every few months. Some company, it's Google or it's Yahoo or it's whoever, says, we're going to kill the password. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm so sure. What you really mean is that for your particular service, you are going to find some way of supplementing passwords that make it a little bit more convenient for people to not have to use them all the time. And that's great. Good for you. But passwords aren't going to die. They really aren't. Passwords are going to be around forever. They might get better. And certainly, as you say, using a password manager can really, really reduce the amount of pain for you. But passwords are here to stay. And if anything, the situation is kind of getting worse. We have had a lot of really big and well publicized security breaches in the last year plus. A lot of passwords have been hacked. A lot of private data has been compromised, some of it like really, really seriously. And every time this happens, I shake my head at, we discover the passwords that people were using because they get made public. And I'm like, still millions of people think that password is a good password, or football or let me in or whatever, it just blows my mind how people are not learning lessons, no matter how many times people's identity gets stolen, or, money gets stolen, or, all kinds of other private data just gets out there because of really bad password practices. People keep doing it. And so I just felt like there's a lot of bad stuff going on out there, a lot of attention on this topic. People I know very well having, their stuff hacked. And so they're, very thinking about this. And so I felt like these books, one of them was about 2 years out of date. The other was about a year out of date. And you got to keep up with this stuff. All of the different password managers that I talk about in my book, Take Control of Your Passwords, have had updates. Some of them really major, big, dramatic updates. And so that affects my recommendations. It affects security. It affects the decisions that readers are going to make about how to manage their passwords. 1Password has had a lot of updates, and so have a lot of others. And the world has changed too. I mean, I have this Apple Watch on my wrist, and so I got this new iMac Pro, right? And I have a new iMac here, and I have a new MacBook Pro down there. And I was really happy to get these two new computers because I can unlock them with my Apple Watch. I can never do that with my old Macs. So I know this capability has been around for a while, but it's new to me. And I'm like, this is really cool. I walk into the room, I push a button to wake up my computer, just unlocking with Apple Watch. You're good, because, I have this authenticator that is, I had to enter the passcode on it, and it's reading my heartbeat, so it knows it's still attached to me. And if it went off my wrist, I would no longer be able to do that. So that's really cool. And that's one of those ways in which the process is being simplified. That's great. Doesn't replace passwords. It helps. And, so that is just like one of many things that I have more to say about now than I used to.
So I'm going to maybe switch it around from what we would expect, and ask
Okay.
that you start with, if you agree, with the update to the 1Password book.
Sure.
Because it's so easy to go down a rat hole too far with passwords themselves, and I don't want to give short shrift to 1Password.
Yeah.
It's the password manager I use right now. I love it for lots of different reasons that we've talked about before. But what do folks need to know that's new about it, or what should they be adjusting to that's new about it?
Yeah, so there's what's new with 1Password, and then there's what's new since my book was most recently updated. So, those those guys at Agile Bits are like cranking out new betas every couple of days. It's just constant. They are always adding new stuff. The software just won't sit still. And as a writer, that's a little bit frustrating for me because like I know that whatever I write today is going to be out of date next week because they're going to go and change something. But it is I don't know of any other password manager that is under such active development with such frequent releases. There are really two things that I emphasize in this version. I mean, all of the versions of 1Password have changed. The versions for Mac, for Windows, for iOS, for Android. But also there's a new command line version of 1Password. So I talk about that. There's this new thing called 1Password X, not 10, but X, which is a Chrome extension that is kind of like LastPass in that when you install this extension, that's all you need. You don't need to also have the app running on your computer. And that's cool because it, for the first time, lets you use 1Password on a Chromebook because you don't need an extra app, a 1Password app, and you can also use it on Linux with Chrome. So that's a new thing. But those aren't the main things. The main things I talk about are changes to the Windows version. So there are two versions for Windows. There's 1Password 4, which is the old way, and 1Password 6, which is the new way. And there are complicated reasons why they're maintaining two versions. Basically, 1Password 4 is what you want to use if you want to have a local vault where you store your passwords, and you can optionally sync it with Dropbox. 1Password 6 is what you want to use if you want to use a 1Password account, and that can be an individual account or a team account or a family account. But this is something where you use Agile Bits servers to sync your stuff through them, and those accounts give you a lot of features that you can't get with standalone vaults. But anyway, 1Password 6 for Windows has changed just tremendously since the last version of the book. It is so much different, better mostly. And so I talk about that for our listeners, viewers who use Windows. But apart from the Windows version in particular, one of the things that's really changed is 1Password's focus. So it used to be that, when it started out, it was just you store your passwords on your computer, and then later, yes, you store your passwords on your computer, and there's a way to sync them between your devices with Dropbox or with iCloud or whatever. Then these accounts showed up. And at first that was like, well, it's a thing for businesses. And then it was, well, it's a thing for businesses and families. And then it's like, well, it's a thing for businesses or families or for individuals, but all this is optional. We still have, the standalone version that you can use in the old way. But nowadays, Agile Bits is really pushing the accounts as the very, very much preferred way to license 1Password, as well as the preferred way to sync your data. You can still use it the old way. That still exists. It's still supported, and I still talk about it in the book. But they have had a real change in their business model to mostly focus on the subscription thing. And I know a lot of people have feelings about subscriptions, which I understand. And also a lot of people have feelings about relying on the cloud for syncing, which I also understand. But the fact that they are using these subscriptions now allows them to do things that were not possible before. And being able to have a version that runs on Chromebooks is just one example of that. I mean, my son, every kid at my son's elementary school is issued a Chromebook. They bring it home from school every day. They do their homework on it. They take it back. And I don't personally use a Chromebook. That's not kind of part of my experience, but I know a lot of people rely on this technology for their stuff, and they just haven't been able to consider 1Password previously. Now they can, so that's great. So that is one example. Another example that I think is quite interesting is what they call travel mode. So with travel mode, let's say you're going to be traveling internationally, you're going to be crossing a border, and you're worried that the customs people will want to inspect your devices, and they might just decide to copy down all of your passwords that you don't really want them to see. So with a 1Password account, you can now activate travel mode, which basically erases all of your passwords from your device until you say, okay, I'm ready to have them back now, and then it puts them back. It's a little more complicated than that, but basically it's a way to avoid having sensitive data on your device when you think it might have to go into someone else's hands. And that is another sort of thing that can only happen because of these accounts. So although I understand and appreciate and sympathize with the people who don't like all the subscriptions and are suspicious of cloud storage, I really focus on the benefits, which is now you can do cool and useful things that you couldn't do before.
And it's I think it's fair to say that, I mean, that's just it. It's not a case of it being a money grab. It's a case of, hey, we're having to adapt to the world as it is, and that means, several things. That means changing the model, and hey, if listen, if a scrap of paper still works for you, well, I feel sorry for you, but because
Right.
I hope you don't get burned, but that's fine. But the world has changed. We all have now multiple devices. We're all mobile. So it just, if there's one category of software that makes sense to be subscription so that it's constantly updated and kept current, it's certainly a password manager.
Yeah, I have to say I was very skeptical of 1Password subscriptions at first. I didn't like the idea of moving to that model. I liked the idea that I would pay for something and then I would own it, and then I can use it however I want, and I can sync or not sync. And if I want to use Dropbox, I can use Dropbox. And if I want to use direct Wi-Fi sync that doesn't go through the cloud at all, I can do that. And the fact is, I still can. I still have the capability to do all of those things, even though I'm paying Agile Bits a yearly subscription to use the software. And I don't begrudge them that. I mean, it's like $36 a year for an individual account, and it's more for a family account or a Teams account. But I might have paid a little bit less in annual upgrade fees back in the day, but they got a lot of employees. They have to provide customer service. They have to feed their families. They have to pay their taxes. They got to keep the lights on. And I, as a small business owner myself, I can very much appreciate the value of recurring revenue. It's not obnoxiously expensive. It's like $3 a month. So for the amount of value it gives me, it is certainly worth that. But having said that, my concern is that you're secure. Okay, my concern is that you use good passwords. My concern is that all of your passwords are long and random and strong, and that they're all different from each other, and that you have an easy way to fill them in. So if you want to say, well, I don't care if it's $36, I want free, I say, great, use LastPass. LastPass is good too. And it's free. You want some extra features? Okay, pay them, $24 a year, but the basic version is free, and go for it. So there are options at different prices. There are options for people who don't want their data to ever touch the cloud. There are options for people who want one-time licensing. Whatever your thing is, there's a way to do it. And although I happen to like 1Password myself, I don't care if you use it. If you do use it, I can help you use it more effectively with my book. But what I do care about is that you use something. Pick something that keeps you safe, and that you understand, and that you like, and that meets your needs, and stick with it. That's the important thing.
Yeah, and that stick with it. That's an interesting little tidbit there. It's you. Yes, it'll take you a little while. Yes, there's a little bit of a learning curve. Not much, especially with 1Password, at least for the basic features. Now, some of the other things you're going to have to explore a little, but yeah, just don't get out of that habit of, oh, I'm just going to do this, quick little 1, 2, 3, 4 password because it's on this site that really doesn't mean anything. Well, it's surprising how many times that can turn into something. That's
right. That's right. And I talk about exactly that phenomenon in Take Control of Your Passwords, where because I've heard that argument so many times. Well, it doesn't matter if somebody knows my password to such and such a site, so I'll just make that one a simple one, or I'll reuse the password for that one. But then time passes and something happens. You forget and you use that same password on a site that matters, or that site changes from what it was when you originally set up the password, and over time they start storing information that you actually care about. Or you think you don't care, but then that site gets hacked and you have to change that password, and you realize, oh, I guess I also need to change that seems not to matter password for 100 other sites. Because I don't want my life to be inconvenienced by internet trolls that just want to make me miserable. Yeah. So, there's always something. And the thing with a password manager, whether it's 1Password or LastPass or Dashlane or one of the others, is it's no more difficult to make a really long random password than it is to say, mother. It's no more effort to create a hard to guess password. So why not? So just because I have over 900 different passwords, and honestly, put a gun to my head, I can only tell you what 3 of them are. I don't know the rest. Many of them I have never even so much as glanced at once. Go to a site, says need a password. Great. Push the button, it generates a password, it fills it in, it remembers it. I don't look at it. I have no need to look at it. I press a button to fill it in when I need it, and it never even, I never even see it. So that's the easiest. It's both the easiest and the most secure way to do things.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk passwords in general, and maybe you just have made it real simple. Maybe the answer is I just let my password manager generate all the passwords randomly, and I can be fat and happy from then on. Is it quite that simple?
Well, no.
I didn't think so. Darn.
I mean, for a lot of people, for a lot of the time, it can be. The central advice in my book, Take Control of Your Passwords, is, you're going to figure out which of your passwords that you actually do need to memorize, because you will need to memorize some of them. If you just turn on your computer and your computer asks for a password, you have to enter that before you can even get to the point where a password manager would load. If you turn on your iPhone or your iPad or whatever, it's going to ask for a passcode. You have to enter that before a password manager can help you enter it. So that one's one you got to memorize. And if you want to have a password that unlocks your password manager that holds all the rest of your passwords, you're going to have to remember that one too. So there's at least 2, and most people have 1 or 2 or 3 others. It might be, your iCloud password, because Apple asks you for it every 7 minutes for some weird reason. And so just because you end up typing it a lot, it's probably going to sink in even if you don't want it to. Maybe you need to memorize your Gmail password or your Dropbox password, whatever. Everybody's a little bit different. You're going to have a few. And so you use really good practices to make those few passwords. And I have a lot of different approaches that you can use to make those. If you want it to be all lowercase English words, you can do that, but you're going to need a lot of words because, there's trade-offs between length and complexity. But however you do it, you do that, and you use your password manager for almost everything else. And there will be some times when you're going to be asked for a password that you haven't memorized and that your password manager can't fill in for you. I mean, I encounter this sometimes with my TV because I have a smart TV and it connects to, Netflix and Amazon and, all the rest. And sometimes it decides it doesn't, I need to know your password again. I forgot it. Can you just enter your password again? I'm like, well, I got this little remote that I can't actually type things on. And like sometimes with my Apple TV, I can just like dictate the password, but with my TV, I can't. And like I can't install 1Password on my TV. So I'm like, I gotta pull my iPhone and look it up and, laboriously enter it. So, there are going to be cases like that, things that come up from time to time where your password manager just can't help. And sorry, you still have the password manager. You look it up, you type it in. These things aren't going to happen every day. They're not even going to happen every week. They're certainly not going to happen, dozens of times a day, like, going to a website and needing to log in. So I kind of just say, well, that's life. Having to go through that tedium of typing, a 12, 16 character weird, wacky, random password, you got to type on your TV or your whatever. Okay, so you got to do that once every month or 6 months or something. Isn't the security worth it? I think it is.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about, in the case of smart TVs, so many of them have microphones, have cameras, that. I mean, we talk a lot here on the show about the Amazon devices, and the Apple devices, and now the Google devices that are in our homes. And you sort of overlook the fact that your TV is sitting there and it has a lot of those same capabilities, and no indication of whether it's on, it's off. How do you know? Is it listening? Is it watching? Should you be concerned? So I'm with you. That's.
Well, one of these days there will be a new edition of Take Control of Your Online Privacy, and maybe we'll spend some time talking about your TV and your HomePod and your other objects that are listening to you. But that'll be another talk.
That sounds good. Joe, you were joking, I know, about okay, I want to use all lowercase words. At one point, I think we had said that 3 properly, absolutely randomly generated, like a password manager would do, is I'm not sure sufficient is the right word, but it was at least acceptable. Are we beyond that point now?
Oh, we're beyond 3. Yeah.
Beyond 3.
So in Take Control of Your Passwords, and I have like a very full, elaborate discussion of this in that book, and I have like a very mini, condensed version in Take Control of 1Password. I talk about this whole concept of entropy, which is basically how hard to guess is your password? How, mathematically speaking, how random is it? How resistant is it to a computer trying to figure it out? And I talk about the fact that there are 3 things that you can do to a password to give it more entropy, to make it harder to guess. And one of those things is simply to increase the length. The more characters it has, all things being equal, the more resistant it is to guessing. The second thing you can do is to vary the character set. So if you're only using lowercase letters, there just aren't so many possibilities for each slot. If you're using lower and uppercase letters, there are more. If you add digits, there are more. If you add punctuation, there are more. So the more different kinds of characters you throw into the mix as possibilities for each slot, the greater the overall number of possibilities that this password could be. So the greater the search space is that a computer would have to look through to guess your password. And then the third thing you can do is add randomness. So if you are just saying, well, it's, football, that's my password. Well, that's not a random string of characters. It's in a dictionary. It's really easy for a computer to find. But if you roll some dice and use each number to represent a letter or whatever, you have some random mechanism in play that it's not just I came up with a word but you are allowing randomness to select your individual characters for you, that also makes a password harder to guess. So the thing is, pick any one or all three. You decide how you want to get to the desired level of entropy. Now, if you have, and I don't have the math kind of memorized, but like, it's something like if you have a random password that has like uppercase, lowercase, digits, punctuation in it, whatever, and it's like 12 characters long, to get the same strength, the same amount of entropy out of using just plain English words all in lowercase, you would need to have at least 5 of them, but those 5 words need to be randomly chosen. So you can't just say, I like you, Chuck Joyner. Those are not random words, okay? You have to use a mechanism that chooses those words out of the many, tens, hundreds of thousands of possibilities. You have to use a mechanism that chooses those words randomly. Now, once you've done that, it's going to be easier to remember those 5 words. It's going to be easier to type those 5 words than 12 totally random characters. The downside is there are more of them. So you instead of just typing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12, it's like you're going to be at it longer. If that's the trade-off you want to make, be my guest. It's okay. The important thing is to get to the necessary level of entropy. And if using words is how you want to do it, that's great, but you're going to need at least 5 of them. And I don't mean like 5 3-character words either. I mean like 5 real words. There's this very famous comic we probably talked about in the past on XKCD several years ago that's talking about this very issue. It's like, well, you have this random password, or you have correct horse battery staple. And the comic basically illustrates how this seemingly random password and correct horse battery staple have the same entropy. So why not use the one that's easier to remember? And that's kind of true, although, as I say in the book, that example is really not strong enough to withstand today's password cracking equipment. You really need to have at least 5 words, and you do need to make sure those words are randomly chosen. But the principle is sound. You can compensate for the lack of character set or the lack of randomness with additional length.
Joe, I know at least once in our discussion of security and online security and passwords, we've talked about the idea of making yourself a lesser target. Let somebody else be the low-hanging fruit. And how does that thinking apply to passwords? I mean, if especially online hacking, it's one thing for you to put a sticker up on your front door that you're protected by a security system, and if none of your neighbors have that, well, a burglar theoretically is going to go to them because not you. But the online world's a little bit different.
It is. I have one of those stickers on my door. Also, it is telling the truth. It is connected to a real security system that really does monitor things and has a real human being on the other end. So don't even try breaking into my house. You're going to get in a lot of trouble. You can't put a sticker like that on your PayPal account or what you like. There isn't an equivalent to that. All I can really say is, even though you can't necessarily advertise that fact, simply making your passwords high entropy, making them hard to crack, is the process by which you prevent being low-hanging fruit. So there are different mechanisms by which someone might try to guess your password. They might just try to say, well, I'm looking around Chuck's office here. He's got a ScanSnap, he's got an iMac, he's got a Drobo. Let me try those words, Or let me try facts, like I'm going to try red sweater. I'm going to try anything I know about Chuck, because words that are easy for him to remember because they're part of his experience are likely candidates. Okay, that doesn't work. Well, I'm just going to go through, I'm going to have my computer try a list of the, 100,000 most common passwords because I can check those in an instant. That didn't work. All right, now I'm going to move on to every word in the dictionary. That didn't work. Let's move on to every word in every dictionary because why not? And, if that doesn't work, then you're like, okay, well, I really, really, really want to get into this account, so I'm going to throw more computing horsepower at this. I'm going to get this big rig with all these extra GPUs and this really fancy hacking software, cracking software, and I'm going to do a brute force attack, and I'm going to try billions of different combinations. And even if somebody gets to that point, the software is going to be relatively intelligent. It's going to try the shorter passwords first. It's going to try the easier passwords first. It's going to try the pronounceable passwords first. It's not going to start with the 5 random word phrases. It's not going to start with the 32 random character phrases or random character passwords. It's going to start with where it's most likely to succeed. If you get this big rig, trying to attack your password for, a week, a month, and hasn't come up with a password, I think the attacker is going to say, you know what? I don't really think Chuck has that much money in his bank account. This isn't worth it to me. It's not worth it. Let me spend this expensive computing power where it's going to produce a faster and better result. So ideally, we should all have passwords that could withstand centuries of a brute force attack. But in the real world, unless what you're protecting is like state secrets or fortune of millions, it doesn't make financial sense for someone to do a sustained brute force attack for more than, hours, days at most. And so to avoid being low-hanging fruit, you want to not have a password that will be guessed by a computer using cracking software in that period of time. If your password can't be guessed in that period of time, for all practical purposes, you're probably okay. It still never hurts to make it more complex still. Because remember, it's no harder to do a longer password than a shorter password in a password manager. But basically, that's what you're looking for. Is you know that if you've got one of the top, really 100,000 or million, most commonly used passwords, that it's going to be really easy for somebody to get into that. And the less likely your password is, the longer it'll be safe, and the less likely it is that somebody will bother.
I hope folks are listening, and especially given I love the fact that you've updated both these books together, because and taking nothing away from Dashlane or RoboForm or any of the other software, the one at least the one I'm most familiar with is 1Password, and It's so simple to generate a secure password and have it stored automatically. And so, as you said, why not? It's just as easy to generate. In fact, it might arguably be easier to generate a complex password than for you to sit there and try to type out a simple one. So why not?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
And I do want to say too, I wrote this Wirecutter article comparing password managers, and I am as we record this, I am in the process of updating it, and I don't know exactly when the updated version will come out, but probably very soon after this interview does. And in that article, my top pick for most people is LastPass on the basis that it's free and therefore the barrier of entry is the lowest. And so if you're using nothing and you're put off by price, that is the easy way to get in. Now, 1Password is my upgrade pick, at least for Apple users, okay? There are still some issues on the Windows side, but at least for Apple users, it's my upgrade pick. It's what I use myself. It's what I prefer. But, you mentioned Dashlane. Dashlane is very, very good. I like it a lot. It's a tiny bit more expensive than 1Password. There are a few things that 1Password does that I prefer. There are also a couple of neat features in Dashlane that 1Password doesn't have. So if you like Dashlane better, great. Be my guest. Another one that I didn't like for a long time and complained about for a long time is a tool called Keeper. And for years, I would mention it in my books and articles, but just say, I know a lot of people use it, but it really isn't great for all these reasons, and it's kind of irritating in these ways. They've recently upgraded it, and it is much, much better now. I feel like I need some time to pass to sort of, build up trust and reputation with the new thing before I can start giving it a full-throated recommendation. But I feel like it's definitely in the running. And if that's the one that makes you happy, awesome. And you mentioned RoboForm as well. RoboForm is fine. It doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles of these others, but if that's one you like, great. And I really don't, I have my personal preferences, but I don't care which one you use. I care that it meets your needs. And so look at the reviews, try the trial versions, experiment with them, get the one that makes you happiest, but use something.
Correct me if I'm wrong, all right? But folks, listen carefully to this, okay? Joe said keeper, not MacKeeper. Keeper.
Oh, yes.
Keeper. So
write that.
Yeah, write that down, please.
I know it's unfortunate that sometimes names collide. So the website is keepersecurity.com. This has no relationship whatsoever with MacKeeper, and I believe you and I have talked about MacKeeper. It comes up in some of my books. It's an app that I would like you to avoid. It's an app that makes it appear as though it will make your Mac magically faster and clean out a lot of clutter and avoid viruses and do all these wonderful things. But it's kind of creepy, and it's hard to remove, and it does really suspicious things, and they have problematic marketing practices and a few other things. So I would just not use MacKeeper.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to go too far down that road, but the point is that the software you're recommending checking out is Keeper. So
Keeper.
not MacKeeper.
Just Keeper.
Just Keeper. Yeah. Okay, good. Just want to make sure, folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of stuff here, and I think we've given some folks a good advice, but it's now time for them to go and get the books, because there's so much more good advice in the books.
Please do. Please get the books. One of the things, and I was talking about this with you, Chuck, before we started. Since I started running Take Control, I've been doing some experiments with pricing, and I have been finding that. Now you're going to be shocked. You're going to be really shocked to hear this, but I have discovered, much to my amazement, that people like low prices. I mean,
who
would have imagined? But back in the olden days, the question was always like, how much can we get away with charging for a book or for an update? And since I've been running 1Password, I've been trying to ask a different question, which is, how little can I afford to sell a book for? And I really want everybody to have these books. I want to make it as appealing and attractive as possible for everyone to have these books. And so I like making deals. I want to tempt you. I don't want you to have to say, oh, well, that's a lot of money. I really needed that much. Maybe I just will keep using the password, football. So I really want you to have these books. So here's the way it's going to work. And it's very similar to what I've done with other books that we've talked about recently, like the Mac Fitness books and Take Control of the Cloud and so forth. So the deal is this. Number one, if you want to buy the books new, either one of them is $14.99, and that's not different. I mean, okay, it used to be $15. We've lowered the price by a penny. It's still really $15, but okay. But I don't want you to buy them individually. I want you to buy both of them. So instead of buying both for $15 each, how about buying both for $20? So the bundle of the two is basically buy one, get the other for $5. Also, if you had any previous version of either of those two books, you can get the latest version of either or both of them for $5 each. So even if you had like the first version of Take Control of Your Passwords years ago, you never updated it, You can get the latest version of that one for $5, and you can also get the latest version of the 1Password book for $5, and vice versa. So upgrades are basically $5 upgrade or cross grade or however you want to do it, buy both. So if you had either of the books before, you can get the latest versions of both of them for $10. If you never had either of them before, you can get them both for $20. And I think it's a really good deal. These are long books. They're deep books. They go into a lot of detail. They're very much up to date and pretty helpful, if I do say so myself. And I just really want everybody to have this incredibly important advice.
You took it right out of my mouth. You know, there's some titles you come on and talk about, Joe, that are great for productivity and they're important for what we do. But when it comes to a book bundle like this, I mean, this even goes beyond backups as far as I'm concerned, because it's one thing to lose your data. It's a whole other one for you to lose a lot more. And if your passwords are compromised, you lose your social networks. You can lose your bank account. I mean, you can lose your credit card accounts. You know, your life can be absolutely miserable. So I really do think these are two of the most important books you author. No question about it.
Yeah, now the wheels are turning. Like, maybe I should have like an Uber bundle that has like the backing up and the maintaining and the passwords and like all of those things that, like, honestly, every Mac user, basically every, in some cases, every computer user really ought to know this stuff. Well, I'm going to have to think on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I gave you something to think about.
Yeah.
Hey, for the record, I can't believe we didn't say it, but what editions are these of both of these books?
Yes. So it's the third edition in both cases.
Sorry, okay.
So Take Control of Your Passwords, third edition. Take Control of 1Password, third edition. And it's a lot of things changed in both books. It wasn't like I added 3 new chapters or something. Both of them were sort of like I just went through the whole thing with a fine-tooth comb and I made hundreds and hundreds of small changes. So it's sometimes as a publisher, it's a little bit arbitrary whether you want to call something a new version that is free or a new edition that is paid. And if it is a new edition, how much are you going to charge for it? I felt like these were both solidly over the line of enough has changed that it really qualifies as a new edition. But I do want to keep the upgrade price as low as I possibly can, consistent with, keeping the lights on. So.
Got it. And of course, TakeControlBooks.com is where you go to get them, along with all the other great books by Joe and by all our other friends and favorite authors. There's so much great stuff there that you really need to go and check it out. But these two should be at the top of your shopping list right now, no question.
Yes, please.
So I kind of think you'll be back a little more in 2018.
Could happen.
Yeah.
Could happen.
Good.
Now, I have to say, we've got a lot of authors working on a lot of books. It's not just me. I run the company, and I do have a number of books, but I would have to add it up. But we have a lot of authors working on a lot of books right now. So you will, I hope, be talking to a lot of other Take Control authors in the coming weeks and months. But yes, I will certainly be back because I've got more books to update and more brand new books as well. And sooner or later, we will have some things to talk about that are not books, but that I think will be quite interesting to this audience. So we will address that when the time comes.
First time in 2018, and you're going to tease us.
Of course I am.
Of course you are. Joe, thank you so much. Thank you for being here this time around, but also thank you for the work you do on these. These just are incredibly important books, and I know I live and die. Well, I live by them. I don't want to die by
don't
them.
Die.
Yeah, don't die. So thank you.
You are quite welcome.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. I'm telling you, I can't stress this enough. Please go and listen to Joe's advice that he's given here. If you are inclined to go and pick up these two books, because they probably are two of the most important things you will see this year. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.